Thank you, everyone. It's a privilege to be here tonight. But before I begin, I'd like us to actually take a commercial break, if we could.
So yeah, sorry about last night.
I just don't understand why you didn't call.
Yeah, well, I was on E-Trade, diversifying my portfolio, taking control like a wolf.
Right.
What's that? That's volatility in the market. Taken care of, wolf style. Ho, ho, ho!
And that milkaholic Lindsay wasn't over?
Lindsay?
Milka what?
The E-Trade ads were very successful and funny because they used babies to convey something that was very complex in a very simple way. In other words, babies in this example could be online trading stock without the benefit of having an actual stockbroker. We'll come back to babies in a moment, but what I want to talk to you about tonight is Facebook and our digital lives. The Pew Research Center recently put out a report that 44% of Americans get their news now from Facebook. But Facebook itself has been in the news lately with issues regarding privacy and fake news. These were just some of the headlines that caught my eye recently. With 1.8 billion users, Facebook affects us on a global level in ways that we are only now beginning to understand and appreciate. But Facebook also affects us on a local level, and that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. For the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of working on the Legoland New York project, which is currently under construction in Goshen, New York. Legoland theme parks are full-fledged theme parks that are designed for families with young children. There is a strong emphasis on education within the park, and they have locations across the globe. Legoland New York is actually going to have an education center that will be open year-round for student field trips. And it also includes a sea life aquarium, which is designed to be a child's first aquarium experience with an introduction to conservation values. There were some, however, that were opposed to actually putting Legoland in Goshen. And I want to be clear about something, that was their opinion, and they're entitled to their opinion. But before we get to that, I want to show you the plan for Legoland New York. This was a sketch that was from early on in the design process, and it demonstrates the mandate to create for Legoland a park within a park. And there was a couple elements of that. For instance, the overall site is in excess of 500 acres, but the park is only being built on 150 of those acres. And what that allows is it allows for significant undisturbed buffer lands to be between the park and any nearby uses, including nearby residences. The other thing that was an essential part of the plan was a landscaping plan that involves the planting of over 5,000 trees to replace the trees that are being taken down as part of the construction of the park. And many of those are going to be large, mature trees because Legoland wants, from day one, its visitors who visit the park itself to be in a place that feels like it is a park. And the only way to do that is to plant many, many trees, many of them being large, mature trees. So I said earlier that there were opponents to Legoland, and like I said, they are entitled to their opinion. But as Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, you are entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight is because I observed over the last 2 years the use of Facebook and social media in a way that was meant to influence public opinion about this project that unfortunately mirrors a lot of the issues that actually affect Facebook for the reasons why it's been in the news recently. So the opponents to Legoland formed not one, but 2 Facebook pages. One was called Stop Legoland. It's pretty unambiguous as what their intent was there. And then there was another one with a more generic name that was called the Concerned Citizens of the Hudson Valley. And the same people were actually behind both pages and posting simultaneously on both. And that's how we know it was the same people, because it was actually fairly obscure and hidden. But whenever anything was posted on the Stop Legoland page, within seconds it would also appear on the Concerned Citizens page. And what they did was they started sharing their opinions about the project. And they did it in the way that so many people do when they share their opinions on Facebook. They use memes, like this one. Again, we see the use of babies, and this is being done in a way to make simple something that is fairly complex as to whether or not Legoland should come to the community. And we also saw very pointed memes that were critical of local elected officials who may have been supporting Legoland, like this one, which criticizes the town of Goshen supervisor for allegedly not caring about Goshen residents. Is it funny? Maybe. Probably not if you're the Goshen town supervisor on the receiving end of it. But the thing about Facebook is it allows you to post whatever you want, and pretty much allows you to say whatever you want about someone else. And the policy guidelines for actually taking down posts on Facebook are very limited. And it basically, in order to get a post taken down off of Facebook, it has to fall into one of three categories. First category is an actual direct threat. So if someone threatens someone else on Facebook, that's a basis for getting that post taken down. If a post contains hate speech directed at a group of people, that can also be taken down. And lastly, if there's nudity in the post, that also gets taken down. But anything else is fair game, like this post, which compared Legoland to a venereal disease infecting elected officials in Goshen. Remember, we're talking about a children's theme park here. And these posts, however, were on the Stop Legoland or the Concerned Citizens pages. So for people to see them, you would actually have to either like or follow those pages. But Facebook provides an opportunity for people to share their opinions with a much wider audience. So Goshen actually has about 14,000 people that live in the town. And over 9,000 people are members of the Goshen Community Facebook page. So there's a very large audience of people that are interested or living in Goshen that you can reach just by posting something on the Goshen Community page. And so a lot of posts about Legoland were put there as well, like this one, which was meant to convey what traffic is going to be like if Legoland comes. But the problem is that this isn't even Goshen. I don't think it's anywhere actually even on the East Coast. But images are powerful. And so if you see this in your feed and you don't know anything else about the project and you don't know any of the specifics as to how traffic's going to be handled, then this becomes not only part of the dialogue, but it becomes part of the truth for people who may not look any further than this. I mentioned earlier that over 5,000 trees were being planted to create a park within a park. But there was also an evaluation of the park site to see which trees that were there now could possibly be preserved and maintained and kept as part of the park. And there was one tree in particular that the opponents focused on that was a large sycamore tree. And the problem was it was located actually in just about the middle of the park area. And so an arborist was hired to go out and do an actual evaluation of this tree. And the arborist found a couple different things. So he found that the tree itself was not going to survive the construction in its vicinity because of the nature of its root system. But he also found that the tree was significantly rotted out, and that it wasn't healthy, and it was actually probably not long for this world. But the opponents claimed that this was the oldest living tree in Orange County, and it was also the largest tree of its type. And the arborist said, no, that's not true. It's the oldest living tree is over in this other location, and the largest type of that particular tree is in a different location. And so as a result, the tree was taken down. And on the day that it was taken down, the opponents posted this on Facebook, saying that Legoland killed the oldest living thing in Orange County, even though it's not true and it had been demonstrated as part of the public record that it wasn't true. But they didn't stop there, and they went on to blame corrupt politicians for the result in the tree being taken down. And here we see this connection that I find very troubling, which is the disagreement means that there must be corruption on the other side. And this is something that I believe affects our national discourse when it's at its worst. Mark Lila is a Columbia University professor, and he recently observed that conversations that used to take the form of, I believe this, and let me explain to you why I believe this, now take the form of, I'm offended that you disagree with me. And when that is the framework for discussion, there is no common ground, and there's no ability to build bridges when you are offended that someone disagrees with you. In any event, the tree came down, and as the arborist had said, it was actually completely rotted out. So it is what it is, and the tree came down. But that's the truth, and sometimes the truth is inconvenient. I just add for the record, no retractions were posted on Facebook that the tree was rotted. But in any event, I want to tell you about something that happened to me when I was in the 8th grade. I had a social studies teacher in 8th grade that had a profound effect on me, although of course I didn't know it at the time. His name was Jack McAndrew. And he arranged for my entire class to get a daily subscription to the New York Times. And then he taught us how to read it. So one of the most basic things, of course, is looking at the largest headline in a newspaper, because the largest headline means that that's what the newspaper believes is the most important news story of the day. But there are other clues that are built into the printed edition of the New York Times in particular that help readers differentiate between news, analysis, and opinion. For instance, news articles actually have justified text in the print edition of the New York Times, meaning that the text goes evenly from margin to margin. An analysis article, like this one, which is a blend of both news and opinion, has unjustified margins, meaning that it's jagged along the right-hand side. And then, if you're looking for opinions, you will find them clearly on the opinion pages. And you may not agree with the opinions that are written there, but at least you know that that's clearly what it is. But these factors that allow us to differentiate between news and opinion are disappearing in our online lives. So for instance, as I said earlier, 44% of Americans now get their news on Facebook. So if you even get your news from the New York Times Facebook page, it looks like this. And the problem with that is it looks a lot like this. And if you are not discerning, you may not know, who is behind writing this and why they're writing it. You may know that the New York Times is in the business of journalism, of presenting news and opinion to its readers, but you may not know why other people are posting things on Facebook, and you may not know whether or not they have any source for their information at all. One of the founders of Silicon Valley recently observed that the whole internet thing was supposed to result the world's best information resource in all of history was to be made visible. And instead, we're living in this time of total opacity where you don't know why you see the news you see. You don't know if it's the same news that someone else sees, and you don't know who made it be this way. Everything is totally obscure in a profound way that it never was before. And this is because you don't know, because on the internet, nobody knows that you're a dog. And where does that bring us? Well, it brings us to fake news. And what do I mean by fake news? Well, it can take one of two forms. It can be news that is deliberate misinformation, which is meant to undermine some process that we're all going through, or it is actually legitimate, factual-based news that is called into question and labeled as fake news by others who disagree with it in a way to undermine it. And it is one of the most critical issues of our time, because if we're getting our news from Facebook, then we have little ability to understand what is actual news, what the sources are, and why we're seeing it. So it's important to be discerning. It's important to understand why someone is posting something they're posting on Facebook, whether or not it's something that affects us on a national policy level or even on a local community-based level. Because we can't wait for Facebook to fix this problem for us, even if they could, and we certainly can't wait for the government to regulate this problem for our benefit. So I would encourage everyone to understand why you're seeing posts and to question why it is being presented to you, because on whether it's a global or local issue, it matters. Thank you.
Dominic
And I also,
Cordisco.
if I may, I want to thank my wife, Amy Cordisco, who's been an inspiration to me and especially an inspiration for this talk. And I would like to dedicate this talk to my mother, who recently passed, but she made sure that I was a reader. So thank you again.